For anyone who would like tea, I have been told to mention it's in the kitchen. It's all set up in the kitchen if you are teetotalers. And with the Keurig, it's set up as a Keurig, okay. So we are going to get ready in about 5 minutes to get the program started. So those of you, if you take your seats, I'm just waiting to get everybody seated here. And then I do a short welcome, and we'll get started. Incidentally, we're probably taking some photos, so if anyone has an objection and doesn't want to be seen anywhere, let us know. Well, I want to just start off by, almost everyone knows who I am. However, there are people who said, "Who are you?" So I am Darla Strauss. I'm the vice president of Bet Aviv, and we want to welcome all of you, our members, guests of our members, relatives of our members. I have my sister-in-law, my cousin, spouse who are here. So I want to mention a few things before we get started. One is we have a brochure for any people interested in knowing more. Tell me more about Bet Aviv. And even if you're a member and you say, tell me more about Bet Aviv, we have brand new brochures that are out on the table. Please take one. And then also the exits, in case for any dire reason that we needed to exit quickly. We have quite a few exits from this room. We have an exit over here. There are exit signs that show you. They're behind me, over on this side. This is a fire exit. There's an exit from the kitchen area. There's an exit in the, all right, Victoria, there's an exit in the front area. So just kind of gleam around the room and see if you know where the exits are. This is just, in this day and age, it's good to know where exits are. Some people were asking where the bathrooms were. They'd never been to the meeting house. This is the Interfaith Center in Columbia. There are 2 of them, and the bathrooms are straight behind that door and around the corner of the art exhibit, so if you need that. First of all, I also want to say thank you to Faye and Morris Levine for providing goodies. Did you all get a chance to enjoy some of that? We have this open, so if some of you say, I need another cup of coffee, please feel free to get some more coffee and whatever. I'm going to start by telling all of you what many of you know. This is our very first seminar presented as part of a special grant that we won. It sponsored the grant by Sinai and Synapses through the John Templeton Foundation, huge foundation that comes out of Great Britain, and the American Association for the Advancement of Science. I know many of you know of and have been readers of Science magazine. They publish 6 prominent magazines. Science is probably the most popular one. I want to let you know that the title of these seminars, and they're going to be this one plus 4 more, is called Knowledge Unbound, Connecting the Worlds of Science and Judaism. So you should have picked up a 1-page when you were coming in, I hope you did, that describes all the following seminars after this one. So we'll probably ask for registration, but keep those in mind. They're going to be fantastic. They start in January, in the beginning of January, and they run through June. One of them we're hoping will be a scholar in residence program as well. The purpose of this grant and the seminars is to introduce science topics within a synagogue setting, utilizing the knowledge of scientists who are members, primarily members of the congregation or of the congregation's community. And the other part of this that's very important is connecting this with a very brilliant clergy person, and that happens to be Rabbi Joseph. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Rabbi Joseph. The role of the rabbi is to look at each science presentation in light of the teachings of Judaism. That is, looking at connections or disconnects through the lens of traditional theology or more contemporary interpretations and writings. So today you're going to learn about quantum physics and reality with a rabbinic discussion that relates ideas based on texts of Jewish mysticism. Just for the record, I'm just wondering, how many of you have ever taken a course in high school or in college on physics? It does not necessarily. Oh, this is great. All right. One day I'll tell you my knowledge of physics and you'll all burst out laughing. There will be a Q&A session allowed too, and I will move the microphone more toward the center of the room. So if you have questions and you're not inhibited, we'd love you to ask questions because that would be great. The other thing I wanted you to keep in mind, for those of you who don't know anything, Sally and I were talking and saying we want to learn more about this, is to kind of think about what you can take away from this lecture, even if it's one or two areas. That's lifelong learning. You don't have to remember everything. So that is all that I wanted to say, but I want to introduce our speakers. And I'm going to start with Morris Levine. Morris holds a graduate degree in aerospace engineering from the University of Southern California. He is an Air Force veteran who specialized in airborne reconnaissance operations and also worked in the intelligence community, retiring as the Associate Director of the National Security Agency, responsible for electronic warfare and electronic intelligence, and more. He's also the founder of MBL Associates, LLC, National Security Consultants. He's done that for years, and is still serving on the board of directors of Airbus. So he has quite a lovely background and a wonderful background. And now a little bit about Rabbi Joseph. Most of us know Rabbi Joseph and appreciate her. There's some other people who don't know her. My sister-in-law knows that I talk about her all the time, and I think she's great. Rabbi Joseph is entering her 5th year as rabbi at Bet Aviv. She was born in Australia and is the second Australian woman to be ordained, which is something that not everybody knows. She talks about her Australian accent, which I totally love. I've tried a few words, and she just shook her head and said, "Stop it." It doesn't sound anything like Crocodile Dundee, if that's what you're thinking about. Rabbi Joseph has worked for 28 years in congregations in Australia and the United States and with the Union for Reform Judaism. As our rabbi, she demonstrates spiritual creativity and a passion for rabbinic and other teaching, Jewish traditions, community connections, writing, and storytelling. So with that, enjoy this seminar.
So before Morris starts, I've been asked by a number of congregants just to utter a prayer for the people who are hostages right now in Gaza. As you know, there was this terrible slaughter on the 7th of October on Simchat Torah, and over 1,200 hostages were taken and are still in Gaza. And I also want to offer a prayer for all of those innocents that have been caught in the conflict in this region in Israel, our people who have been attacked, and the Palestinians that, are not able to escape, that are innocent, and there are some innocent people there. So let's just take a moment to offer a prayer for peace. Ribono Shel Olam, Eternal One who is host of worlds and this world, we ask for strength. We ask for redemption. We ask for peace as our hearts go out to all of those who are suffering, all the families that are in turmoil. And we say, Amen. I know we might have a few people here who are not Jewish. One of the things when we study a topic is we believe that everything in the world is Torah. It has something to teach us. So if you know the blessing, please join with me. If you don't know the blessing, listen to the English. And it's okay to say Amen if you agree, because Amen means I agree, right? Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Eternal One, Sovereign of universes and worlds, who commands us with commandments and encourages us to soak ourselves in words of learning. And we say, Amen. With that, Morris.
Good morning.
Your microphone, Morris. Up close.
Good morning. First thing, truth in advertising. I am not a physicist. I'm an engineer. And engineers view the world differently than physicists. Richard Madonna, raise your hand. Thank you very much. Richard's my backup just in case. I call this Quantum 101 because I'm as not a quantum physicist. That's the best I can do. I want to talk about the very basics of things. There's lots of math and lots of theories subject to dispute and study in physics. I'll talk about two aspects to start. One is the smallness of the submicroscopic world. You see the cartoon, I think, up here. You see the atom, the molecule, and a particle. The picture of the particle, which looks like a small solar system, is the typical rendition of what a particle looks like. In reality, if you scale it, if the nucleus of a particle is the size of a golf ball, the electron is 2.5 kilometers away. Think about that. It means that since this is a quantum universe, for the most part, the universe is empty. You look up in the night sky, it doesn't seem that way, but most of it is emptiness. Let's talk a little bit about the math, the only math I'm going to go into. I was working space programs for about 10 years, payloads and rockets, and in those areas, the size, weight, and power of the devices are very important. And in technology, we're working with new generation chips. And the contractor had been developing quarter-micron sized chips, which were absolutely remarkable at the point in time. A micron is 1/1,000,000th of a meter. So we're already getting very small. To phase it a little bit differently, at 40 to 50 microns, you can actually see it. At 70 microns is about the size of human hair. 1 micron is 1,000 nanometers, and a nanometer is a billionth of a meter. So a quarter of a micron is 250 nanometers. Anybody got an iPhone 15? Not yet. One. Your chips, Lou, are at the 3 nanometer level. And just to give you another comparison for how big a nanometer is, the thickness of this piece of paper is 100,000 nanometers. So we're definitely dealing with a small. God, I guess, is dealing with the large, along with Newton.
I'm not sure that God is dealing with the large. God is
Good.
dealing with the large and the small.
I wanted to get you going. First, we'll talk for a couple of seconds about quantum reality and the question of what's real. And the rabbi is right. Subatomic particles are real. Newtonian physics is real. I know that this is a table. It's not an automobile. It's not a bed. But in
Morris.
quantum physics, it could be both.
Morris, hold the microphone to your mouth.
It could be both. I'm having trouble with my voice as well. So quantum mechanics is the physics of the small, the subatomic world. Quantum reality is the concept that the physical world at the quantum level is fundamentally different from the physical world. There are aspects we call weird science in quantum, one of which is superposition, which is the ability of a quantum particle to exist in multiple states. There are 4 states in a quantum particle: principal, azimuthal, magnetic, and spin. In Newtonian, that's the world that we perceive as real. I'm sorry I'm having trouble with my voice. Quantum reality theory refers to the branch of physics that examines the nature of reality at the quantum level, the behavior of particles and energy of the smallest scales. According to quantum reality theory, particles do not have definite properties until they are measured or observed. This is another weird aspect. You can observe a particle and it will change. It'll change from a particle to a wave, from a wave to a particle. The aspects change as well, just by the very fact of observation. Can't figure that one quite out. Overall, quantum theory relies on a framework for understanding the strange and counterintuitive nature of the quantum world. It has wide-ranging implications for various fields, including physics, chemistry, and computer science. It continues to be an active area of research and exploitation.
So let me talk a little bit about this. I love the fact that there's 4 aspects, because we in Judaism, in the mystical part of Judaism, and the mystical part of Judaism, some say dates back to the 2nd century, but probably was more, became more involved in the medieval period and more filled out in terms of trying to understand what the world around us looks like, which is something that quantum physics does as well. The Kabbalists believe that our reality is also divided into 4 sections, but rather than talking about it as 4 different ways the universe operates, it is different ways the universe operates, but they talk about it in terms of worlds. And so in the Kabbalist reality, there is the world we can see, which is known as Asiya. This is the practical building, what we can see when you put together your Lego set, right? That is in the world of actuality. That is the world you can see. The next world up is the world of Yetzirah. This is the emotional part of our being. This is where we also draw up plans for our world. So I have my Lego set, right, that I can build, but I have to have a plan, right? This is what I'm going to build. This is how I'm going to build it. That is in the world of Yetzirah. That is in the world of creativity. It comes into fruition in the world of Asiyah. Beyond the world of Asiyah, we have a 3rd world, which is a creation, the world of creation. It's the developing the concept in detail. So let's go back to our Lego set that we're building something from, right? We have this idea that we are going to build a house in the world of Bria. In Yetzirah, we draw up the plans for building that house with our Lego set, and then we make our Lego set in the world of Asiya. Atzilut is the world beyond that, right? This is the world of emanation. This is the idea that a house can even be built, right? This is the inspiration. So going back again, we have the inspiration that there is such a thing as a house, right? We have the idea in Bria that we are going to build a house. We have the development of the plans of how we're going to go about that in Yetzirah, and then we get our Lego set out in Asiyah, and we build that house. Beyond all of that, beyond these worlds of existence, is Ein Sof, the one without end. Some people call that God. The mystics like to use the word Ein Sof, the one without end. And that is where all inspiration comes from. So these four worlds are happening concurrently at all times, right? You don't think about such a thing as a house. I need plans to build a house. I'm building that, right? You don't think about that. It all happens, and there's a back and forth. As you're building the house, you might go back and you might replan, or you might go back to, well, what is it that I'm visioning, all right? So those worlds are happening all the time together, and the Ein Sof, the inspiration, is emanating all the time through those four worlds. And you can't see any of the elements of this, right? They're so small and they're so tiny, but the big picture exists as well.
We're going to take a look later at the quantum version of the four worlds. It's actually more than four worlds, but it's pretty close. Can we have the Feynman slide? Oh, that's good. It's up next. How many of you know or have heard of Richard Feynman? Excellent. Feynman won the Physics Nobel in 1965 when he was at Caltech for quantum electrodynamics. And his famous quote is, if you think you understand quantum, you don't. Another famous quote of Feynman's was, it's the world of the small and there's plenty of room in the small.
Yeah, and so it's interesting because what Kabbalists would say, much like Feynman, is if you think you kind of understand Kabbalah, then you don't. You don't understand Jewish mysticism at all, right? Remember, this comes from a world beyond where we can understand. There is no central understanding. So both quantum physics and Jewish mysticism have that in common. You could take this quote, if you think you understand Kabbalah, you don't understand Kabbalah. It would work equally as well. Maybe Feynman was a bit of a Kabbalist too.
I'm at the same place with Kabbalah as I am with quantum. Don't worry about it.
Next slide.
So here I'll just call these, to keep in context, I'll call these the 5 rabbis of physics. Some of these names will be familiar to those who have taken physics courses. And we'll talk about some of the learning, some of the observations and discoveries. The father, I think, of quantum is Max Planck. The work begins in the 1890s. By 1914 or thereabouts. Richard, do you remember when that was?
1902, because Einstein used the quantum in 1905.
Yeah, very good. And Rabbi, I think there's some Jewish mysticisms that are parallels to...
So let's talk, I want to talk a little bit about Kabbalah and the history. As I already said, Kabbalah, Kabbalists will date back the beginnings of Kabbalah to the 2nd century of the Common Era. There was a sage that some of you may have heard of and some of you may not have heard of, but his name was Shimon bar Yochai, Shimon, son of Yochai. And he's purported to have written a book of mysticism that is called the Zohar. The Zohar means splendor or enlightenment. It's actually more likely that Kabbalah, that Jewish mysticism, are writings that emerged in medieval Spain and southern France beginning in the 13th century. And they were recognized very early on as being mystical and esoteric. Some of you may have heard about Kabbalah, that you have to be male, fully versed in Torah, and 40 years old before you can understand it, because it's so up here. If you go to up here without being grounded in life first, right, then your head just goes to crazy places. So you have to be both grounded on the ground in terms of reality, and then you can have a look at things that are beyond reality. And today we're looking at things beyond reality.
Speaking of which, one of the weird aspects of quantum science is the instantaneous measure between particles called entanglement. It's weird and it's defining in its logic. Einstein, along with two of his cohorts, Podolsky and Rosen, discovered entanglement appears instantaneous. That's really interesting because the particles can be separated by light years, galaxies away, the other end of the universe, next door in the laboratory, or whatever. But the characteristics of particle A show up in particle B. So if you measure A, you know what particle B looks like. How is that? It defies logic. State of one particle cannot be described independently of the state of the other. Properties such as position, momentum, or spin become correlated. So this is often looked at by the novice, that would be me, that if I'm instantly communicating with a particle that's a galaxy away, it must be faster than light. It's not faster than light, although it appears to be. I can't explain that. If anybody can, please raise your hand. And we'll try and deal with that. Another aspect of the weirdness is wave-particle duality. And I think Schrodinger had a lot to do with this. Wave-particle duality states that light and matter can behave like both waves and particles, depending on the situation. So if I'm observing a wave motion, and I look at it, it becomes a particle. I have a little cartoon for that in a minute. This theory was proposed in 1923 based on the idea that light and other electromagnetic radiation has both particle and wave properties. There's a device called the double-slit experiment, and if the protons or the photons go through one slit, they appear in sort of a line on the receiving side. Another example at the same time, goes through a slit, it comes across as a wave. Think of dropping two drops in a puddle, two rocks in a puddle, and you get conflicting waves. That's exactly what it looks like with wave-particle duality. I drop the rock or the photon, and it looks like waves, and that indeed is the case. It's part of quantum superposition, has important indications for quantum computing and cryptography. For example, a qubit, which we'll find in quantum computing when we talk about it, can be in a superposition of both states. Newtonian physics has no quantum.
Can you be careful not to drift off? Your
Keep the
voice
mic-
drifts and then we can't hear.
Keep the microphone up.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm having just this side of laryngitis.
You want the next one?
Yeah,
there we
next
go.
one, yeah.
Here, let's do that. Ooh, hold on. I have to bring my microphone with me. Let's see if this helps.
Thanks, Rabbi. Is that better?
Yes.
Good. Let me go back to the beginning and put you to sleep. So there are two ways to picture a particle or a wave. What's shown is the particle. It shows the particle as part of what looks like a field. That's part of quantum field theory. But by the same, if I just saw the waves, it would look something like this. And if I observe it, it turns into a particle. That is weird. Einstein had problems with this as well, so if I have problems, I'm in good company. Under superposition, Einstein is quoted with the saying, God does not play dice with the universe. And he was talking about superposition.
So Judaism actually agrees with Einstein that God doesn't play dice with the universe. Surprise, surprise. My teacher of Kabbalah, of mysticism, and my congregation knows that I study with a Kabbalist every Friday morning, and I have for about 20 years. And we look at Kabbalah both from the Zohar but also through Hasidic eyes as well. One of the things that he says in terms of Kabbalah, if there's any bottom line in Kabbalah, is that all things being equal, and that's pretty key, all things being equal, things will happen with the purpose of the Creator. that there is intentionality in the universe. All things being equal, things happen with the purpose of the Creator. Kabbalah, much like quantum physics, has this notion of non-reality and the weird. We've just heard about all these weird theories that Morris has walked us kindly through. And so, for example, while there is reality, while there is normality, some sort of normality in the universe, there is, which we might call the laws of nature, there is a belief in Kabbalah that certain incantations, certain actions can have impact on those laws of nature. Some of you might have heard of the founder of Hasidism, the Baal Shem Tov. Anybody heard of the Baal Shem Tov? A few people, right? The Baal Shem Tov, or the Besht, right? His name literally means Baal is master, Shem Tov, of the good name. The concept behind the founder of Hasidism is that he was the master of these incantations that could change the laws of nature. That's why there's so many wondrous stories about him. So Baal Shem Tov literally means the one who knew how to use the divine names to change what we would consider to be the basic bottom line. And, the idea is, there is also an idea that in terms of reality, that each of us comes and has a destiny to fill in that reality. And so our souls might reincarnate to actually have that reality fulfilled. Unlike Einstein, though, right? I've already said what's similar to Einstein, the idea that God is in charge of everything, that there, even the things that we can't understand, it's the divine name that might change everything. Unlike Einstein, who believed it was possible scientifically to understand the mechanics of the universe, which is something that Einstein believed, right? With enough research, we could get it all. Judaism believes that ultimately there's a mystery, and that mystery is in the divine presence, in the Ein Sof, right?
Now, for the science fiction fans, I want to talk a little bit about the many worlds theory of universes, and we'll also talk about constants in the same talk. Whether or not there are multiple words is complicated and contentious. We're going to go into that a little bit. In a paper by Martin Rees at the University of Cambridge, I think Rees was the royal astronomer and a Nobel Prize winner, said that it was easy to envisage other universes governed by slightly different laws of physics, in which no intelligence, life, or any kind of organized complex systems could exist. Should we be surprised that a universe exists in which we were able to emerge? The probable answer to that is no, I believe. We expect that all the constants, which we'll talk about, occurred in the first tiny fraction of a second that the key features of our universe were imprinted. Probably for other universes as well, if there are other universes. The conditions of the universe are described through its fundamental constants, fixed quantities in nature, such as a gravitational constant or the speed of light. Still talking about Reeves. The values of the constants are in the range that allows complex systems such as stars, planets, carbon, and if ultimately humans evolve. Physicists have discovered that if we tweak some of these parameters by just a few percent, it would render our universe lifeless. What is the extent of physical reality? Rees says most physicists would agree there are galaxies we can't ever see, that these outnumber the ones we can observe. If they stretch far enough, then everything we could ever imagine happening may be repeated over and over. This leads to the subject of avatars, that somewhere in another galaxy or another universe, there's another you. There's real motivation to explore counterfactual universes, places with different gravity, different physics, and so forth, to explore what range of parameters allow complexity to emerge and life to emerge. There is, in fact, recent research on this, some universes being more friendly to life than our own, and some where little tweaking of the constants would render the universe stillborn. There are some that don't like the concept of the multiverse, and we won't get any further deep into it.
Morris, speak up, if you can.
I really apologize, everybody.
Yeah. So let me talk about this concept of worlds and universes is really interesting. And we find it not just in mysticism, but in early Judaism. There's parallel texts. And I've put some of them up here on the screen. The first one is from Genesis Rabbah 3:7. Jewish tradition suggests that many types of worlds were created. However, they no longer exist because God is not happy with them. This is from the Midrash, the stories that are told in Judaism. Rabbi Yehuda bar Simon, Rabbi Judah, son of Simon, said, "It will be evening," which is a quote from Genesis 1. It is not written there, but rather it was evening. From here we learn that there has been an order to time even beforehand. Before worlds were created, there was this concept of time. And then Rabbi Abahu says, this teaches that God continuously creates worlds and destroys them until God created the current one and said, "This one pleases me. Those did not please me." And Rabbi Pinchas said, the source for Rabbi Abahu is God saw everything that God had made, and behold, it was very good. This pleases me, and that does not please me. So this concept of multiple worlds that you get in quantum is also something that we find in Judaism. There is this conception that our universe had multiple worlds with them. But notice it's a had, not currently have, right? Our second text is also from the Midrash, from Genesis Rabbah 7:5. And first of all, it quotes Genesis chapter 1, verse 24. God said, "Let the earth produce the spirit of living beings by their species, animals and crawling creatures and beasts of the earth by their species." And it was so. Many of you know the story of creation from Genesis, right? And then God said, "Let the earth produce," is the words we're going to concentrate on. And Rabbi Elazar said, the spirit of living beings, this is the spirit of Adam and first man. So the idea is the final world. Why is this final world created? What is the epic place of this final world? That is the creation of life and human beings. And that is one of the reasons why this world was considered good.
A little bit larger than that is that it's why the universe is the way it is.
Yep.
Well, one of my favorite cartoons, another crazy theory by some is that the universe exists not just because we exist, but because you exist. So I thought this described it pretty well. Going down the highway of life, the coulda, woulda, shoulda turn-offs.
Right? And that's just so similar to what I said, right? That's the reason why this world exists and that there's purpose and that we move forward in the world.
We're going to dig deep into constants. There's a great website around the number 137 from another website called Physics to God we'll be talking about, which I highly recommend. This site is run by two rabbis, Rabbi Fader, who is a math PhD, and Rabbi Zimmer, who's a physicist. And their website, again, is Physics to Go. What they're talking about here is the fine structure constant, which is the force governing the charged elementary particles of electrons in contact with light or photons. This is a critical constant, and if it didn't exist, or if the number was slightly different, the big number at the top of the screen, there would be no electrons, thus no atoms, no molecules, no us. So let's talk about constants. There are about 30 constants in physics. Constants are fixed numerical values that are generally believed to be universal in nature and thus are independent of the unit system in which they are measured. Helps us to understand the fundamental laws of nature and the behavior of matter and energy. There's some examples. Speed of light is the most common. We had a pre-talk conversation before we started about, is the speed of light always the same? The answer is no. I'll let Richard answer that one. Unconstrained, the speed of light is 186,282 miles per second. There's the Planck constant, used to describe the behavior of particles at the quantum level. The gravitational constant, used to describe the force of gravity between two objects. The Boltzmann constant, which describes the behavior of particles in gas. And most importantly, the elementary charge constant, carried by a single proton or electron. It is used to describe the behavior of charged particles in electromagnetic fields. Next slide. So this is a description of the physics to God. It's actually a podcast. Each of the segments is about 30 to 40 minutes. It's very, very interesting. If you're interested, just go ahead and Google Physics to God and you're there. So we're going to talk about different universes, different principles, starting with the anthropic principle, which suggests that the universe appears fine-tuned for life because if it wasn't, we wouldn't be here to observe it. So we could say that it was created for Adam and life itself.
So this anthropic principle, this principle suggests, you said, that the universe appears fine-tuned for life because if it weren't, we wouldn't be here to observe it. And when I heard those words, when we first started talking about this is the text that came to mind, right? Genesis chapter 1, verses 26 through 31. And God said, "Let us make humankind in our image after our likeness. They shall rule the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, the cattle, the whole earth, and all the creeping things that creep on earth." And God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fertile and increase, fill the earth and master it, and rule the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, and all the living things that creep on the earth." And God said, "See, I give you every seed-bearing plant that is upon all the earth, and every tree that is seed-bearing fruit, and they shall be yours for food. And to all the animals on the land, to all the birds of the sky, and to everything that creeps on earth, in which there is breath of life, I give all the green plants for food." And it was so. And God saw all that had been made and found it very good. In this text, God fine-tunes everything to support life, right? Very similarly to the anthropic principle. Do you agree, Morris?
I agree.
My job is done.
Time for coffee and tea. Next is the multiverse hypothesis, or the parallel universe hypothesis. According to this, our universe is just one of many that exist, each with different fundamental constants and conditions. Again, the constants that describe our universe, if you tweak them or adjust them just a little bit, it could all disappear literally. No electrons, no photons, etc. But the multiverse hypothesis, we are in the right one.
Right. And we already talked about the concept of worlds in Judaism, right? We have the four worlds of the physical world, the world of formation, creation, and the Atzilut, the world of archetypes, right? And if there's any change in any one of these worlds, right, there are constants, but any change, there are changes in the universe as well. Very, very similar to what they're saying in quantum physics.
Next is theoretical physicists, which argues that the fundamental constants and laws of nature are not arbitrary, but emerge from deeper, more fundamental principles or theories.
And of course, we have our theories too. We have, in Judaism, everything is based on the theoretical. We have 3 creation stories that bring 3 different theories about how life has been brought about. We have Genesis 1, which talks about the world being created in 7 days or 7 epochs, right? And that there's these building blocks of life itself. We start with with a light and darkness, and then there is land, and then there is sea, and when that is ready, then we get the light and the way that the sun and the moon and the stars are. Then we get plants that can occupy the universe. Then we get fish, and then we get birds, and then we get animals, and we get humankind. Everything builds one upon the other. That's Genesis 1. We also have a second creation story for those of you that are familiar with the Bible, which is the Garden of Eden story. This is a very different story. It sets about a very different principles about the creation of the universe. Humankind is created within the Garden of Eden, and Eve is taken from the side of Adam, and both of them live in the garden. And we watch through that story as humans mature. This is about how they are infantile at the very beginning. Then they start to grow up. They rebel against their parent, God, right? By not doing what God asks of them. They eat of the apple from the tree. And then as they mature, right, they have to grow up with that rebellion, and they're expelled from Eden, right? And they have to be independent. That's the same with our children, right? They're infantile. They start growing. We have conversations with them. They rebel. They eventually leave us, right? They find their own parameters of who they are as human beings. That is the second story, Genesis 2. There is a third story of creation in the Jewish mystical tradition as well, right? So this is also another theory about how the world came about. And in this theory, God decides, the Ein Sof, the one without end, decides that God wants to create the world, but has a problem, because Ein Sof, the one without end, is everywhere. And if you want to create something and you take up all of space, where are you going to create it? So the one without end, God, has to withdraw God's self and create a space to create the universe. So God withdraws God's self into 10 vessels, and those 10 vessels you often see in the Sephirotic tree. And God, in those 10 vessels, puts God's self in there. The problem is, if you are Ein Sof, if you are the one without end, if you take up all space, you don't fit into little vessels very well. And the vessels break. This is known as Shvirat Kelim, the breaking of the vessels. And with that breaking of vessels, shards of those vessels go into the universe. So as well as the world being created, we have these little bits of shards that shouldn't be there. We call those things evil, right? Bad stuff. So we have the good stuff and the bad stuff created one way. And some of you may have heard of the phrase tikkun olam, repairing the world. The idea is we're putting these vessels back together. That is another basic theory of how the world works.
Next on the list, theoretical physics. Some physicists argue that the fundamental constants and laws of nature are not arbitrary, but emerge from deeper, more fundamental principles or theories.
Right, and of course, much like we have different stories about the creation of the world, we have in Judaism, we have multiple definitions of deity, some which are not inconsistent with what quantum physics have, and you can pick the version of deity you like best. When I teach Introduction to Judaism, which I do on a regular basis, and we talk about God, and I'm talking to these people that are not Jewish, I say to them there are only 3 constants in Judaism about God belief. What are those 3 concepts? One is that God is one, unique, alone. It's a one entity. The second is that we struggle with what that divine is. Not that we believe, that we struggle. Our name's Israel, the ones that struggle with the divine. Right? We're not asked to believe. We're asked to struggle with that belief. And the third is that God speaks to us in some way, that divine entity is in conversation with us, whether that be through Torah, whether that be through our experience in the world, for our knowledge of science, right? That we do that. So we believe that there is some constant in the universe, that there is a divine behind that, but we can understand that divinity in multiple ways. As long as we believe that divinity is one, that we are struggling with what that divinity might be, right? And that we believe that that divinity is in some way, I'm not defining the way here, in conversation with us. Theoretical Judaism.
This brings us to an idea that has been denigrated a lot. It's sometimes called creationism or intelligent design. It's as valid as any of the other theories. This viewpoint posits that the apparent fine-tuning of the universe is evidence of an intelligent designer or creator who intentionally set the parameters to allow for life, often associated with religious or theological beliefs.
Right, and of course, intelligent design is something that Judaism believes in systemically. This might not be a scientific description of it. This might not be how scientists would explain it, but it's innate in Genesis 1, these 7 days of creation, right? That the world was set up and created in steps.
There are a couple of others who pop up on the screen every once in a while. Anybody see the movie Matrix 1 and 2?
Yeah.
That's another way to posit another universe. And over the last few weeks, there have been several articles appearing about the universe being a simulation. So imagine a 14-year-old God sitting at a...
I said he could define God however he wanted. 14-year-old God, if that's his definition, geh gesund.
And it's playing a game. It's a simulation of a universe, and that's where we are. I'm kidding, but some people are not. The next one is an eye chart, or is it?
The next one is an eye chart.
No, I think we took it out. Go back. Keep going back.
That's back.
No, we took it out. Is that quantum computing?
Yes, next one is
Okay.
quantum computing.
So let's talk about some practical things that we see in quantum. There's a lot of literature now about quantum computing. The factor that makes quantum computing important is its power to compute. Sounds right. So I put an example on the right side of the screen, so that the right as you're facing it, about a 5-bit computer, an analog computer, which uses zeros and ones to compute, can record one of 32 combinations of zeros and ones. But a quantum computer with 5 qubits can work with all 32 permutations at once. Now, currently there's a contest, as it were, going on between IBM and other companies, including one called Atom Computing, which broke just in the last 2 weeks, about 1,024 qubit computer. To use an example, on the left side, Google, it could be just as well be IBM, its development of a 158 million times faster than the most fast supercomputer. In other words, it was able to perform a calculation so complex that it would take the world's most powerful supercomputer 10,000 years to perform in just 200 seconds. Now, this is real stuff. It's not fiction. It's not imagination. It's not fiction. It's not imagination. And it's only going to get bigger. This obviously also has implications for artificial intelligence, or the human brain, as it were.
Isn't it amazing at the intellectual ability that God has given us to create and to do things that are so wondrous, right?
Incredible.
Let me talk about quantum computing a little bit because much of this is really beyond our comprehension and understanding, right? And for those of you that were in my Lunch and Learn last year, this might seem very familiar. We looked at the book of Job, and the idea that the world is beyond us is right there in the book of Job itself. Job, for those of you that are not familiar with the book, Job has everything. You know, he has family, he has wealth, he has houses, he has cattle, he has land. And Satan comes along and says to God, Job is only righteous because you have never really tried him. And, you know, you try him and Job's not going to be so righteous and Job is going to curse you. So Satan convinces God, if you can say such a thing, to try Job. And right through the whole of the book of Job, Job has everything taken away from him. His children die, his wife dies, his land is taken away, his cattle die, everything is taken away from him. He has 3 friends that try to come and convince him that he's done something bad to deserve all of this. But all through it, Job maintains his innocence. But he also rails at God, why are you doing this to me? And then we get this text. This is from God. I will ask you, and you will inform me. Where were you when I laid the earth's foundations? Speak if you have understanding. Do you know who fixed its dimensions or who measured it with a line? Unto what were its bases sunk? Who set its cornerstone when the morning stars sang together and all the divine beings shouted for joy, right? Our tradition, much like quantum computing, which is growing in its ability, is beyond our understanding. This world is beyond our understanding. And the book of Job tells us that many thousands of years ago. Another example of practical quantum, right? Photosynthesis.
Yeah, I think almost everybody thinks that they can't see any quantum results or activity. And photosynthesis is there every day, where sunlight or photons are absorbed by a chlorophyll molecule, and the energy is transferred into the photosynthetic reaction with near 100% efficiency. I don't need a large hadron collider. I don't need absolute Kelvin, 0 degrees. It just happens as part of the process. And there are others like this as well. There is research about the example of quantum biological effects affecting the way that birds and animals migrate and find their way back and forth.
What is amazing about this acknowledgement in quantum of how as we go back, of how the universe works and it interacts and it can be explained by science, is the awe that is there. And that awe is also innate in Judaism. And many of you are familiar with it. These are the blessings that proclaim in our tradition, some of the blessings that proclaim how awesome it is that our universe operates at all. I love the first blessing. We're an adult crowd here. This is the bathroom blessing, right? This is, thank God I can go to the bathroom and it's all working correctly. And it's one of the first blessings we say when we wake up. Why? Well, what's one of the first things you do when you wake up? Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe. You formed me a human being so wisely. You created in me all kinds of hollows and ducts. You know what that means. Inner organs and intestines. As I am all transparent to you, it is apparent and clear that if any of these that need to be open would clog, or any of these which need to be enclosed would seep, right? Constipation and diarrhea here. I could not exist and live in your sight, not even for a moment. Blessed are you for healing me in amazing ways. Isn't it amazing when our bodies work right? And as we get older, I think we're more appreciative of this. right? Isn't it fantastic? And isn't it great to have a blessing to say that? Because we often don't think about that. We're very earthy in Judaism, right? We often don't think about that as something. But the idea that this, that we have here, that the universe, operates in a specific way is specifically here in our blessing. More the idea that the seasons operate and day and night operates in the order that it does, right? Blessed, which is this blessing might be familiar for those of you that go to Friday evening services. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being. I love those words. Speaks the evening into being. Skillfully opens the gates, thoughtfully alters the time and changes the seasons, and arranges the stars in their heavenly courses according to plan. That there is plan, there's deliberation in the universe. You are creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness from light, transforming day into night and distinguishing one from the other. Adonai Tzvaot, Adonai being God, law or Lord, literally, Tzvaot of hosts. The idea in ancient times was that there were many types of angelic beings and gods, but there was one God as well. Adonai Tzvaot is your name. You are in charge of everything, and that's your name. Ever living God, may you reign continually over us into eternity, right? May everything keep operating just as you set it out, as you planned it, right? Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on the evening, right? So this whole idea that, the universe operates in a specific way, right? And that quantum physics is behind that is so totally okay with Judaism because we believe in that order of the universe. We believe in that.
I'm still waiting for God to fix my body.
Do you say the blessing every morning?
I do. Thanks, God, for letting me wake up.
Yes.
I don't think we have.
Which slide?
We have that on a slide?
No, we don't.
Okay. Let me just talk about it for a second. One of the original thoughts about this presentation and talk was that we would deal with consciousness and quantum. It turns out that basically there's only one theory that's operating between consciousness and quantum by Roger Penrose. If you're interested in that, let me just say a few words. Roger Penrose is a Nobel laureate physicist, 92 years old, who developed a quantum theory of consciousness. Theories called ORCH, O-R, suggest that consciousness depends on quantum computations in microtubules within brain neurons, and these computations are terminated by a process of objective reduction of the quantum state. This theory, which sounds really great, and you can read all about it online, just Google Penrose consciousness on YouTube, and there's several excellent presentations, is subject to laughter by other scientists. And among themselves, scientists disagree. Everybody seems to disagree on the consciousness side. The neurologists, the psychiatrists, the psychologists, the biologists, even the DNA folks get in on it. So what consciousness is, pick your own favorite definition and thoughts, and that's what it is, because there's no agreement.
I think Judaism would talk about that in terms of soul, and we have several different words for soul. There's chaya, which is the life force that's within us. Even little animals have that. There is nefesh, which is the spiritual soul that is within us. There is ruach, which is our life animation form of soul. And the fact that, and this is very, very innate in mystic concept, this idea that we have these different types of soul or levels of soul within us. And I think that that's very parallel to that idea that different things animate us.
Yeah, it's along the same lines of sentience. What constitutes sentience?
Right.
And consciousness.
Yeah. So I'd love to open this up to questions. we've gone through a lot of material. A lot of it's been very esoteric because both quantum physics and Jewish mysticism is pretty esoteric. But we would love to have some questions. We're going to move the microphone. If you've got questions, if you line up behind the mic, we'll take them in terms of those people being lining up.
It could be a short line. I'm not sure, but we'd love you to ask some questions.
And here comes Cal
And
Blender.
here comes Cal. I can always rely on Cal for a question. Hey, Cal.
Are you ready?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so Morris, this is to you. So what do physics say about what happened before the beginning? So in Genesis, in the beginning, God created heaven and earth. And in physics, the Big Bang started 13.8 billion years ago.
Or thereabouts.
Or plus or minus whatever. And so what does physics or cosmology or astrology say about, if anything, what do they speculate about what happened beforehand? And that may tie into the string theory and the concept of multi-universes. So
It does.
So I'm asking that question to you, and I guess you already discussed that with the concept of God creating many worlds and being unhappy with them and destroying them before he found one that
So
God-like.
so there are multiple concepts, right? Because yes, there's the idea that God had this idea of the world, right, and created it. In the Midrash, we have the creation of many worlds, but we also have the Kabbalistic idea that the whole world was filled, well, whole universe, multiple universes were filled with God, and God had to withdraw God's self, right, to create the universe itself. So, Judaism is very complex because much like you have, 10 Jews in a room and 10 opinions, right? Also, our
20 opinions.
or 20 opinions, exactly. Our texts themselves have multiple ideas in it. One of the things that makes Judaism, I think, unique to other religions is that we are not as doctrinal. We are more a religion about asking questions and and the questions are more important than the answers.
Let me just say, I think it's quite remarkable, and I've been thinking about all this since I was a kid, and who went up to heaven in a chariot fire?
Elijah,
Elijah.
the prophet. Eliyahu.
That was my introduction to science fiction right there. The amazing thing about Judaism has been that in Judaism and the writings and the studies, how close they came to the science of today, many worlds and so on. It really is incredible, and this has been an eye-opener for me as well.
So what does physics believe happened before the universe was created? What was there?
Yeah, so there was a singularity, and then it exploded.
We think.
That's what the theory is.
Yeah. I think, Richard, are you going to stress this in your talk?
Yes, I am, but that's the standard theory. There's, and I think Penrose is associated with this as well, the idea of the recycling universe, where it doesn't collapse back down to a singularity, but gets very small and then expands and starts all over again. So there's no way to answer that question. If you ascribe to the Big Bang, there is no before the Big Bang, because the universe is in that singularity. So there is no before.
Okay, thank you.
So our Scholar in Residence session, which ends this whole series, is going to be addressing just that topic. So if you're interested in more on that topic, please feel free to come.
Another question? More questions?
Okay, earlier you were talking about there's 4 worlds of reality, and it got me thinking about somewhere in the last few years I read that human beings mostly think in 3 dimensions of reality, but astrophysics and scientists have theorized now there could be as many as 23 different dimensions of reality. So one of the things that I had thought about for a long, long time is the concept of God and heaven and angels and all of that could possibly be because God and heaven could be in a different dimension of reality that we can't conceive. And it is kind of amazing the things that are in the Bible that go back a long time ago, that there's no way they could have known them. For example, the very first sentence in Genesis says, "In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth was void." Well, if they didn't really know the earth was void, I mean, they didn't have archaeology, and if you study the science of evolvement of the earth, it took 2.5 billion years for it to cool down in an atmosphere and before life could be here. So it makes me wonder that maybe the universe or all of these things we're talking about are different dimensions of reality that you have to attain, and maybe you discussed that when you learned Kabbalah.
Right. So let's talk about reality. I'm going to find the right slide here with the right picture on it. There we go. All right. So I talked about the fact that there's 4 dimensions in reality. Do you mind if I get more complex with you? So many of you may have also seen the Sephirotic tree. I want you, it's very hard on a flat surface to explain the Kabbalistic idea of worlds because it's a flat surface, right? And in fact, it happens in multiple dimensions. So these worlds of Asiya, Yetzirah, Bria, and Atzilut happen in these energy centers that on 4 different levels with energy going between those center areas as well as up and down and diagonally, which is what they're trying to show with all of those different lines. And so, in fact, the 4 worlds are operating in all sorts of ways in 10 different levels. So let's multiply that into 40 different energy levels that motivate creation. So when I say 4 worlds, that's a simplistic understanding of what's happening, right? Because it's happening here in us, it happens this way, it happens this way, it happens this way, and it's all the energy is going simultaneously at the same time. In other words, there's this complex vision of what brings about the reality that we can feel and that we can touch. Right? Not so different to what they're saying in quantum physics.
Good.
John,
First, let me commend you.
come up to the microphone because otherwise other people won't hear you.
All right. First, let me commend you for trying to take on this question of resolving science and religious faith. I never expected I was going to hear quantum Kabbalah. Pretty amusing stuff.
Pretty close.
So first, a compliment to you. But I think you deserve a little recrimination, perhaps. I think people are probably more confused now. And if you notice, you never defined the word quantum. What are we really talking about? The
It's from the
true
Latin quantum.
promise of quantum theory was that things are quantized. They are in levels. If you think, for example, you're driving on a highway, you could only drive 30, 40, or 50. You can't drive in between. And you make instantaneous leaps from 30 to 50. That is the quantum leap that has been talked about. You didn't talk about the fact that Einstein quantified things by creating the photon concept. So I just commend you to think further about what is the real definition of quantum, is that we have step functions, that things are quantized, and much more sublime, much more rich concept. I'll leave it there for you to comment, but thank you very much.
You know,
Point
this
taken.
is the suggestion for our next grant. So,
Thank you for
anybody else who,
No,
or you want to talk about that?
let Morris actually comment on that.
Well, thank you for that. When I said this was a basic quantum approach, I meant basic. But it also is from the Latin quanta, meaning part or particle.
So I'm back up here because I think there are no more questions. I want to also compliment, I mean, you know, I am a real novice in this whole field. We have somebody we might have teach the next time, come along with Morris and the rabbi. But did you enjoy the lecture? Did you pick one or two? And I have to tell you, I really never took a course in physics, but I bought a wonderful book called Physics for Dummies. And I realized that I'm below a dummy in this. But when, you know, we were putting together the grant, I did see something, and the rabbi talked about, you know, and you both talked about laws of nature, and I noticed the blessing for the bathroom. 4 people left the room and then came back in.
Darla, it's time for your light bulb. joke.
Right. I just, the one takeaway that I took out of the book, Physics for Dummies, and I thought this was interesting, and the Kabbalah, I have to say, it is very confusing. And Rabbi, I loved your Lego analogy. I mean, that made a lot of sense to me. It's very, very difficult to understand it. But I don't know how many of you have trouble waking up in the morning. I happen to be one. It's always been painful. Not my husband, Jim. He just jumps out of bed and happy as a lark. But I found in my Physics for Dummies a wonderful answer to why I'm having all this trouble, and it was referred to Newton's first law. So this is very meaningful for me. Newton's first law, meaningful to me in my life, that a body at rest wants to stay at rest. I mean, I've taken that and I think about it every day. Anyway, I think that they were amazing, and it's not an easy, this is not an easy thing to do. That's why this grant is very, very unique. You know, you can say, well, we're going to bring in lectures on science, but to relate it in a religious way, and the funders of this also work in terms of grants to Christian organizations and churches. This is a whole grant program for Jewish institutions. At Hillel, there's a Hillel involved. There are 15 grants that were made. We're one of the 15 in the whole country. So I hope you'll all not only talk about how much you enjoyed this and you've learned a couple of very interesting things, but that you will come back because January 6th is the next one, and it's a very interesting session on X-ray technology and how it's actually some of the new techniques and technologies in X-ray that are keeping us safe when we go on a plane or, you know, for cargo ships. And Howard Feldmesser, many of you know Howard, he's going to be doing that. There will be following that 2 Shabbat lectures, a shortened Shabbat, and one of them is going to be all about your heart. And this happens to feature my little boy, David Strauss, who is now 6'3" and 50 years old. But he's going to talk about electrophysiology. That's his field. And that's pacemakers, defibrillators, ablations, and the rabbi is going to really talk about saving life and the ethics involved. And I think you're going to find that really, really interesting as well. And then our own Terry Clayman is going to be here talking about pharmacology, prescription drugs, and how they can interact in a negative way with over-the-counter drugs and prescription drugs not syncing together well. And then finally, Richard Madonna. We are working on Richard, and the rabbi will be involved in every one of these, and this is really compliment to you to be able to find the way to connect this, because that is really not easy for many people. Many synagogues said, wow, I don't know how you're doing that. So the last one will be about the universe I'm just being very general because I'm going to learn a lot too. And Richard Madonna, who I brought to teach a class to Teachers of the Year about his project on solar energy. And I said, Richard, you have to understand that I have a kindergarten teacher. There are 25 teachers. One of them teaches kindergarten, another one teaches 12th grade, AP physics. And he was able to bridge that gap. So we're really, really, really excited about that.
I have a bigger challenge briefing politicians.
Yeah, okay, I can believe that too. So, this is a wonderful friend, the president of the synagogue. Did you want to talk? Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. He's waiting. Okay.
Just like reality is complex that you learn through Judaism and physics today, the politics of my congregation seem to be complex too.
So before, just one more round of applause, really. They tackled a tough subject. And I'm very happy to turn this over to my colleague and wonderful friend.
Darla,
Yeah.
Darla,
Oh,
Is there any reading list or books you can recommend to further learn about this topic?
the web is full of stuff.
Okay, so just the web.
Yeah, go to YouTube, you got videos, most of which are understandable.
and I just
And,
want to introduce, this is Jonas Goldstein. He's my first cousin. His dad and my mom were brother and sister, so I'm so happy that he's here.
And papers, there are multiple
I have the
papers.
mishpucha. Lou Ebert, president, for those of you who don't know Lou, president of the congregation.
Good morning. First, I want to thank everybody for coming today. It's a real good turnout. I want to thank Darla, who really made all of this possible with the help of the rabbi. I want to thank the rabbi for, at least when she was talking, I understood a little bit. Morris, you make me dizzy for the whole day today after this.
I was dizzy to begin with.
But I have a very good solution for all of you who are just as confused about physics as I am, and that is the 100X program. For those of you who have registered, you know what I'm going to be talking about. For those of you who haven't yet, that's just the opposite of what you were faced with this morning. The simple questions, multiple choice answers. You just, when you're using your cell phone, just keep going like this. And when you're doing like this, you're helping make money for Better Viv. It's the simplest thing in the world to do. I'm making a point to do at least 3 every day since it started. You can do it all kinds of places. I did it while I was having ice and electrical stimulation on my knee yesterday at physical therapy. Just whenever you have time to do a little bit something, it's just $2, what do they call it? $2 of feedback for...
that we receive.
Yeah, right, that we receive. It's so easy and it can be so helpful for our congregation. You have a question about that?
I just wanted to mention, I did one, you have to be 6 months out from that particular company that you're dealing with.
More or less.
Right, well, because I wasn't on one and they didn't count it, so
Ooh.
I just wanted to mention.
There are so many choices, dozens upon dozens. I was able to get back at LabCorp for sending me a bill that I shouldn't have received. There's just so many opportunities for you to be mean, too. It says, what do you like about this? What don't you like? And they give you a box for other, and you can put anything in that other.
Yes.
When it comes to computers, I'm a general nitwit, and this program was so much fun because you could pick drugs, restaurants, 7-Eleven, any number of things, and all you have to do is participate and put in your opinion. Nobody cares if you're correct or incorrect. They just want you to put down your ideas.
Yes, you do prescription drugs that went and put in my dog, Phil Science, stuff like that. It's very, very easy.
My friends, there is still food, there is still coffee. It has been wonderful to be together, how wonderful it has been to learn together. I look forward to seeing you at future events, and Shabbat Shalom.
Rabbi, you were wonderful. You did a great job.
Job, Sadie. That was so interesting. We'll listen to that podcast. Physics to God.
It's terrific. It's great.
Terrific, Morris. I enjoyed it. I don't know what you said, but I enjoyed it.
Next one.
I could hear you the whole time. In front here. Yeah, the green is putting your face
Okay.
Thank you.